So I wrote Buoyant for entrepreneurs and visionary leaders who are painfully stuck and riddled with self doubt, who believe that path to success and freedom is through more work,
Mhm.
discipline, and productivity. And through the very fun and easy exercises in the book, as well as the experience of reading the book, what happens to you over the course of those pages is that you discover the reality is that there is a much easier way and that you're more than capable. You are already qualified before you open the book,
Mhm.
and that you will see the changes start in your life very quickly and in very surprising ways.
Welcome to Work It, Live It, Own It, a show that explores how to upgrade your lifestyle through life lessons, real estate, and entrepreneurship. Here's your hostess, SaCola Lehr. Hi, friends. Welcome to today's episode. I'm thrilled to have this conversation with Susie deVille. Susie is an entrepreneur, coach, and author of Buoyant, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Becoming Wildly Successful, Creative, and Free. And you'll be surprised, it's not exactly what you think. It is free of the time management, productivity hacking, 10x strategies that we hear so much in so many markets, business markets and forums and webinars that we hear today. But to give you a little insight about Susie's journey, she went from overcoming adversity to thriving in both her business and life is truly inspiring. So join us as she shares her insights on rediscovering creativity, leveraging one's time and true nature, and finding success with joy and flow. Get ready to be empowered, to tap into your own creativity, and embrace your unique path to success. This episode promises to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit and leave you feeling inspired. And I can tell you, friends, I truly felt inspired by having a one-on-one chat with Susie today. Let's dive in. Welcome, Susie. It's so great to have you on today. How are you doing?
I am so happy to be here. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Susie and I just met a little while ago, and we found out something interesting about ourselves that we're both Carolina girls, which is amazing to actually have someone to speak with that's not too far away. That's awesome. And also found out we have something else in common as well. We're in the same line of business, which is real estate, which is phenomenal. And Susie and our approach is a little bit different from the typical version of what many people in the public think that realtors are. But that's not what I had Susie on today. She is actually going to outline for us strategies and ways for you to rediscover your creativity and reclaim your confidence by having some transformative moments and breakthroughs. So, welcome, Susie.
Thank you so much.
So, Susie, what can you give us a little bit of your backstory? We were talking about this briefly about what led you to this point of becoming a best-selling author of your book, Buoyant.
Yes. So I will start with when I became a licensed real estate agent, which was 2001. And prior to that, I had a background in anthropology, publishing, and nonprofit leadership. But when I entered the world of real estate, I just fell in love with the entire industry. And everything was going just great until 2008
Mm.
when the markets crashed and everything in my life at that point just imploded. That was marriage, health, business, finances, everything. And my first instinctual response was to do what I always did, which was to just work harder. I thought, I'll just work my way out of this mess that I'm in. And what I learned was that I was going to have to completely revamp my entire approach to not only how I work, but to how I was living. And so I made this vow that if I could extricate myself from all these messes that I was in, that I would reach back and help as many people as I could. And that became my book, Buoyant. All the secrets, all the things that I learned, all the myths that we're taught, all the cultural lore that is incorrect, and the way that our brains are wired, and how the surprising way out of all of this didn't turn out to be more discipline or more productivity or more hacks or more thinking along the lines of, oh, I'll just sleep when I'm dead kind of stuff. It was the opposite, that the path to success and freedom was by tapping into something that I innately had, which was my vast reservoirs of creativity. And I would have never in a million years thought that would be the case.
You had a lot going on at one time. But that's life, right? When
Yes.
something happens, it seems like things come in threes, whatever, or multiples all at once. So I can now understand and get a bit of sense of why you titled your book Buoyant the way
Hmm.
you did. Because when I think of buoyancy, it's keeping afloat no matter what, through the currents, the tides, the waves. So thank you for sharing your backstory. And I'm sure I connected with it, and I'm sure some of the audience members connected with it. But Susie, can you share with us some specific strategies that you implemented to help you rediscover your creativity and reclaim your confident, true self while facing those challenges in your personal and professional life?
Yes. So, what I learned was that I really needed to top off the tanks of my energy first. I was walking around this sort of hollow husk of a human because I was emotionally distraught. I was on a financial gurney. Everything was just bleak. And so my first thought was, okay, I need to do what author Paulo Coelho tells us to do, which is to inspire ourselves. So, inspiration, not the light bulb over the head inspiration, but inspiration that literally means breathing in beauty, art, nature, doing things that bring us alive, being with people we love. That became sort of my focus and my mantra was I'm going to breathe in these things that are going to bring me back online. Then when I had my inspiration tank and my energy tanks sort of topped off, I began testing and experimenting with things to see what kind of practices would heal me as well as help connect me to this new path that I was on. And I was very surprised, once again, by what I discovered. And I later came to call these the 5 M's. But in the moment, I was just sort of picking up clues. And so I'll take you through the 5 M's.
Okay.
The first one is morning pages, which is the brainchild of author Julia Cameron, who wrote the book The Artist's Way. And this is just 3 pages of fast brain dump writing. This is not prose. It doesn't have to be punctuated or spelled properly. This is just taking everything out of your head and putting it on paper. And it's a beautiful way to start to calm yourself down and call yourself home. And even if you have just 5 minutes to do one page, I have a client right now who's traveling constantly, and she's just doing one page and it's still working beautifully for her. The other is meditation. And I started experimenting with just 5 minutes a day, sitting in a quiet room. And now I do much longer meditations, and I was trained in transcendental meditation. And I know a lot of people think, oh, that's too complicated. It takes too much time. It's not for me. But just a few minutes by yourself, unplugged, can work wonders to reset your central nervous system and to again just kind of call yourself back and put you back at the helm. The third is movement. I am a big believer in the power of moving our bodies. And this can be anything from chair exercises, depending upon your level of mobility, all the way to jogging, hiking, swimming, whatever it is. I do a walk in the mornings, and I find it to be the best idea generator. There is very few times, there are very few opportunities during most days where we have just everything kind of walled off and we have this beautiful taproot into our intuition. And as a matter of fact, I wrote most of the big ideas for my book standing in the middle of the woods with this journal, as a matter of fact, this little pocket journal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the next moments of inspired learning. This is just another few minutes a day, picking out an inspirational quote, a page out of a book, um, just reading something or listening to something that connects you into the greater web of creators and inspires you to think outside of whatever your current situation is.
Right.
And the last is the one that all my hard charging entrepreneurs fight me on. When I mention it, the little veins in the top of their head start to pulse. And that is making something. And this is, again, something very simple. It can be just 5 minutes doing a doodle, coloring something. You can collage, you can paint, you can sketch, you can cook, you can garden. Some people say, hey, if I declutter, does that count? It counts. So, moving your hands turns out to be what's key without all kinds of other distracting things. But there is a wonderful expression from an author, an artist by the name of Linda Berry, and she says, you know, your ideas come from your head, down your shoulder, down your arm, to your hand, to your paper, but it also works the other way. You also, when you're writing and when you're moving your hands and when you're making something, ideas come from your hands up your arm and into your shoulder and through to your brain. And so these are all beautiful ways to connect us to our intuition. We are wonderful at using our strategic minds. And I don't advocate that we give those up, but I advocate that we do add our imagination and our intuition and our vast problem solving skills into the equation. And it makes for a much more calm, joyful, and abundant way to live.
I love that because the 5 M's actually touch on every aspect of your life. And you're taking care of yourself first, primarily. And I'm one of those people that if I'm not creative, it bothers me to no end. I feel stagnant. I feel uninspired. So I have to create something. Believe it or not, video editing helps me. I love doing
Mhm.
that, or making candles. So I get what you're saying, because if I'm not and I feel, I'll go crazy. And
Well,
that,
stagnant is actually, I think, a fantastic way to describe it
Mhm.
because creativity unexpressed is not benign. In fact, it is toxic. And it's damned when it's dammed up within us and we don't identify. oh, I haven't been doing my whatever it is that
Right.
you'd like to do, or maybe you've never done those things, or maybe you tried those things when you were little and somebody shamed you for something that you made and you never tried it again, which is unbelievably common.
Right.
But when we don't express ourselves creatively, and it's not the outcome, it's not the thing that we're making that is the point. We get so hung up, oh, I don't like it. It's not any good. Everybody's going to hate it. It has no relevance. You may love it, and that's kind of a bonus. But the point is spending time doing the creative act. That just releases so much energy inside of us. And it sort of gently coaxes us across this threshold into this world where we have new courage to take bold action, and we leave this scarcity survival state and we enter into this world of what's possible,
Mhm.
and we start to try things. And that's, for an entrepreneur in any industry, that is our key to success and joy in whatever work that we do.
I love it. I love it. Again, you're taking care of so many different aspects of your life, and it fuels you to do other things to keep your cup full. So, in your book, Buoyant, you challenge the prevailing advice for entrepreneurs to go all in and maximize productivity at all costs. So, can you elaborate on the alternative path to success? Because is you described it differently. We think that as a business owner, we got to go all in, we got to 10x this. So, can you elaborate on the alternative path to success, the joy, and how the joy and flow that you advocate for, and how has it impacted your life and the lives of those you coach?
Sure. So let me start with the outcome first,
Okay.
just because a lot of people will hear the first part of the story and go, oh, that's magical thinking. It's never going to work
Right.
because our cultural messaging is so strong that the only path is to be on the grind and to hustle every day, right? So let me start with what happened. I went from working 80 hours a week and just so stressed out and exhausted, to working 4 days a week, quadrupling my income, leaving financial debt. So when I was in my nuclear winter period, which was from 2008 to 2013, I had $250,000 in debt.
Mm.
And I was also at the same time launching a real estate firm with no evidence that the market was going to improve anytime soon. And so the outcome for me was not only shifting my life and working in a completely different way, but I became not only debt free, but financially free. And so this is not just laying in a meadow of daisies and hoping that the magical wizard is going to come see us. This is actually something that works in every client's life. Everyone with whom I have ever worked has not only dramatic results. I have a client who was also very much in debt, and she has long crossed the millionaire mark, and is doing all kinds of interesting investments and things. I have corporate clients who have shifted how they work. I have people who are in public education who are also artists who are learning how to build their creative body of work so that they can transition from one kind of way of living to an entirely different way to sustain their life very successfully through their art. So it works whether you're a real estate agent or whether you're in the C-suite or an entrepreneur. So how did I get there? Well, the first thing that I realized was that I was going to have to be very clear about who my authentic self is. And that required some archaeological digging to get down to who my true self was. Because over the course of many years of messaging from culture and from other people, I also had these expectations that other people had placed on me that I mistakenly thought were my own. And those, again, who are in the real estate world will understand this because there are so many instances when we are expected to just show up at a house on a Sunday at 7:30 in the morning before the client leaves town. And so we have to become much more proactive in understanding what it is that we truly want, what it is that makes us come alive, and how we want to spend our days. And as Annie Dillard would say, that's how we spend our lives. So I got really clear on those things at the beginning of the process. And then I went on what I call a creative rebel's voyage, and I started delving into the visual arts. I had never believed that I was an artist, even though I grew up in a house with a father who was an engineer and an entrepreneur and an artist. I just thought, oh, that's not for me. I'll never be able to, because I couldn't paint or draw realistically. That was my definition of what art was. Can you believe it? We have millions of people in the world who have the same notion. And if anyone doesn't hear anything else today, I want everyone to believe that, yes, you are an artist. I can prove it to you in 5 minutes, actually. So I began to move into this world. I started leaving behind the world of linear thinking and perfectionism and this notion that my worth was tied to how much I achieved. And once I started to see, oh my gosh, I have been on the slippery slope my whole life, which tied my idea of who I was to what level of success I had, or how many pieces of paper I had, or how many certifications I had. And I had to retrain my brain to think that, oh, that's not the path. Self-worth is going to come from within me and from my own sense of self. But I had to be clear, of course, as to who that person was. So when I began to shift away from the sort of controlling world of perfectionism and more in terms of embracing and tapping into my innate creativity, I started to develop this sense of not only connection to my true self, but I could see that I was attracting my ideal clients effortlessly because they could now hear and see me. I was connected to myself. They could connect to me. Anything that I said, marketing message wise, any materials that I created, anything on social media, websites, etc., people said, okay, that's who I want. That's who I want to work with. I want her to help lead me out of the messes, whatever those are in my life. And I believe that this is the path that sounds the most in alignment with what I want to have happen. And so I no longer had to shout and, do the equivalent of dancing on TikTok to get attention in the market.
Right.
Because that level of authenticity and vulnerability is so resonant and it lands on the hearts and minds of who you really want to work with. And so we're not talking to the prefrontal cortex. We're just leaping right over that and going into people's hearts, and they just are quick decision makers at that point because we're not trying to convince them of something. They have found some level of resonance and truth in an authentic story with powerful results that moves them into action. So I could then just focus on taking great care of my clients and giving them incredible experiences without having to um, just shake the trees and shout and spend thousands of hours on social media and thousands of dollars on print ads or whatever the current marketing geniuses suggest that we do.
Okay, so that is going against the grain and the norm of what most people hear on the internet nowadays. There's so many conflicting pieces of advice on how to market your business, how to market. But one common thread I have seen, heard, and in the conversations and for the Work It, Live It, Own It community is that getting to know who you are and what inspires you and your brand, what keeps you alive, what keeps you convicted, what keeps you centered, grounded within yourself. And when you operate from that, then people connect with you because you, one, allow yourself to be vulnerable, but in a way, you're able to talk about what you do in a totally different light. Because there are a lot of people out here who give the frontal face of the business and everything looks polished and great, or they say, I'm an expert. And I don't like to consider myself an expert on anything. I'm still a learner. I may have knowledge about something, but to say I'm an expert means like I know everything. And let's just be real and honest. When it comes to business, we're still learning in life. We're still learning every single day. And if I learn something, then I want to, and I've tried it or I've implemented it in my life and I see the difference, I'm happy to share that. So I am kind of curious, and thank you, Susie, for sharing that with us. But I am kind of curious because you mentioned that you, in that time period, and we know what happened in the United States from 2008 to 2013, when the real estate market shifted dramatically, drastically, and you were in debt. So part of that was you rebranding yourself. But how were you able to go from that point in your business to where you are now?
So I became very clear with whom I wanted to work because I had to be very selective. And I was the situation that I was in was had actually done me a great favor because not only did I have to change how I lived and how I worked, because if it hadn't been that dramatic and painful, I would not have shifted to the degree that I did. So I realized that I had to work with people who were in my hell yes category. And I knew I was incredibly adept at the world of real estate and that I would, could, and would provide the best level of care to people who were in distress situations. And I also could take care of the investor who was coming into our market. We are in a mountain resort community, and it's a highly desirable market for folks who want to invest. And so I could work with both ends of the continuum in terms of where people were. So we had the investors who were coming in trying to leverage cash and wanting to know exactly what to invest in to maximize, of course, their returns. And then I had folks who were in distress sale categories whose entire lives were melting down, which I completely understood. And I could work with both to help both find success. And so word got out that, my investor clients were making, they were having incredible results. And the folks who I were helping on the other end of the spectrum, of course, they were sharing their stories as well. So I did not have to spend a lot of precious resources on finding clients. And that was very important. And I also structured my real estate office, and you talked about buoyant um, being unsinkable. Well, I chose the name of my firm, White Oak Realty Group, because the white oak is a native tree in my area, and it's also what you make boats out of. It's unsinkable. And I knew that I sort of had my Scarlett O'Hara moment, with the carrot over my head, as God is my witness, I'm gonna
Right.
make this real estate firm a success. So I was very lucky to have the ability to have I created an office. I and I don't recommend this, but I renovated a tiny little place on credit cards. And it was beautiful, and it was right in the center of the bullseye of the market. And I just had a vision for what I could make as long as I just stayed um, focused and consistent and took excellent care of people. And so that's exactly, I was very fortunate to have a lot of wonderful clients and some significant deals that pulled me completely out of debt and put me in a position where I could start to transition out of that to selling the company in 2018 so that I could write a book and fulfill another dream, which was to start the Innovation and Creativity Institute and have that be the majority of my life.
I love it. So you took from the beginning in 2001 in your real estate business, casting this huge white net, which is what a lot of entrepreneurs do, not even just in real estate, but realtors in particular want to cast this huge white net and see, okay, how many fish I can get into the boat. Since we're talking about being unsinkable, right? And buoyancy. And so that can be in any business very tiresome, taxing, burdensome, because one, you're losing yourself and who you are, and you become this people pleaser, and you come to want and seek external validation and approval. And at the same time, you're causing damage to yourself
Mhm.
because you're trying to be all things to all people. And there's a way to do that, but not without sacrificing yourself. So say, for example, like you said, you focused on people who were dealing with distressed properties, or for whatever reason, they were in distress and they needed to sell their home. You could help them go from distress to seeing clarity in a future. And then you were able to help investors. So by you changing the focus and helping people, in that point, and you're one of the you're another realtor who I talked to who was in the business at that time and said, I could focus on this at this point, but also work with investors. But
Mhm.
you were able to do that by building up your reputation, by working by referral, building that word of mouth, which is what I was told when I first started my business. And one of my colleagues said, I'm telling you, word of mouth is so powerful. It's like your free marketing billboard, and you stand out to other people. And that's so true, guys. And I know you may seem like it's all airy fairy and it's just out there, but guys, let me tell you, by showing up in rooms, being yourself and coming from your core self, like Susie has been talking about, people see that. People see your energy and they resonate with that. If people walk away from you having a conversation with you and they're like, wow, I really enjoyed my conversation, you will stick out in their minds. I had an example like that this week. So, Susie, now that you've sold your practice and you're focusing more on, and we got to talk about this too, because probably need to have an author on my show about publishing a book, because that's a whole nother dynamic to itself for those who are aspiring writers or who are writers. That's another part of creativity that you've talked about on one of the M's. How do you recommend entrepreneurs navigate, and we talked a little bit about this, but navigate that equilibrium between pursuing business goals, maintaining their overall well-being? You talked about the 5 M's, but especially in a fast-paced and demanding world, some people say, well, that's easier said than done, but I got to get up. I got to take care of the kids. I got to look after my family. Or if you don't have kids, I got to dash off to work, because some entrepreneurs are still working full-time jobs while they're pursuing their business goals. When am I going to have this time? You said walk in the morning. That's great. And we may all have these ideas in our head to do that. How do you help your clients go from, yeah, that's a nice idea, to actually implementing that in their lives?
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. So it is perfectly natural for us to have this desire to go from being on the couch to scaling Everest by Friday. We totally want to just have those kinds of results. We want to change everything
Yes.
immediately. And that is just setting us up for colossal frustration and failure. So, what I have started people with is pick one of the M's that calls to you the most. Which one seems like it would bring your energy up the most?
Mm.
Fill you with peace and calm and a sense of ease. And start with one and start with 5 minutes. Even if you're just going to do a movement and you walk around your block and you do that for a month and you don't do anything else except for that. What we have to do is start to prune old neural connections in our brain and start to rewire new connections for a new behavior and a new habit and a new practice. And so the power of accumulation works in our favor, even if it's 5 minutes, because we're showing up, we're doing the thing, we're wiring and firing. We're showing up, we're doing the thing, we're wiring and firing. And the simultaneously, what happens is the old thing that we used to do, maybe that 5 minutes we used to sit there and squint at our phone and scroll through Facebook or whatever. We're
Mm.
not doing that anymore because we have our sneakers on and we're out the door. And that's pruning that old behavior away. So if we can start with some realistic expectations, if we can be supremely kind and compassionate toward ourselves and say, you know what? There are lots of things that I want to do. I can start with this one small thing and I can let that be the building block. When I first started, I wasn't doing all 5 M's. I could barely, I was just looking for oxygen, right? I was
Okay.
just barely able to function. So it wasn't like I was, woohoo, I'm going to go do this and spend 5 hours on my morning practice.
Mhm.
There's just no way. So if we start small and we build, and the other thing that I think is very important to mention, when we do these small practices, we will start to experience time very differently. The survival scarcity brain will always say, there's not enough time, there's not enough time, there's not enough time.
Mm.
And it's our job to go, well, let's just see about that.
Yeah.
Because that 5 minute walk is going to change your experience of how time functions for you, even in just that brief walk, time is like an accordion in a lot of ways in terms of how I experience it. When I believe the lie, there's not enough time, and I skip certain things,
Mm.
then my experience of time equally constricts. When I disbelieve what my brain is barking at me, and I'm like, I'm going out into the woods anyway, or I'm going to sit here with my journal and have a cup of coffee, my experience expands, a time expands. So, what's happening is our energy, our level of energy and focus is driving, and this is my interpretation of it, is in part driving how we experience time. So, if we focus more on managing energy and less on productivity hacks and time management and all those things, how much can I cram in?
Mm.
Let's get clear about what we need to um, get rid of. And we'll cling to those to-do lists because this was me. And we'll say, I can't get rid of anything on this list. Well, yes, we can. So I encourage people, look at your to-dos and let's get off some boards. Let's stop doing the things that are draining our energy. Let's change some health habits. Let's get some more sleep. Let's not say yes to doing the committee work on Saturday mornings anymore. Whatever it is that we can reclaim back to ourselves, we reclaim that energy, but we also, our soul is just in there going, yes, you go, girl. And that fills us with a whole new sense of willingness and possibility, which helps us with these 5 M's, right?
Mhm.
Because we're back in the saddle of our true selves and we're back in command rather than being on demand according to what everybody else wants.
Love it. And you touched on the fact that our brains are going to lead us down a path of like, no, really, you shouldn't do that. I think in one of Dale Carnegie's books, I'm just now embarking on reading some of his books. And one point in one of his books said, when you're dealing with other people in a disagreement, your first thought or your first reaction that you think about, disbelieve that because that's just an emotional reaction. So it's the same way of what Susie was just talking about, what you were talking about, and how we got to go, you silly little brain. No, uh, let's focus on this. And then your body, your soul actually thanks you. Like this morning I could have said, I could continue to scroll on social media, which is a huge time suck, a huge time warp. And I have to say a lot of the clients that I have never I mean, I have people reach out to me, but my clients don't come from social media. They come by word of mouth. And so that means that my time spent on social media, I don't need to focus on because I look at the pattern, the track work and say, where do I get the most benefit? And it's by actually having genuine conversations with people, showing up in a room or just interacting with them. And then someone says, oh, she's a realtor, right? Oh, I didn't know that. And a lot of times we don't have to go out and like, hey, here's my card. Although you can do that. But touching and getting to know 5 people every single day, whether it's through a post or something that really resonated with you and you just want to share it, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. It's okay. But at the same time, do things that fuel you, light you up, ignite you on the inside. So, Susie, I want to thank you for coming on because I can talk about this all day long and people don't believe, whether you believe me or not. But here is another prime example of a great conversation where you have someone who has gone from being a realtor and starting their own firm to selling it to Now, as a best-selling author and doing more fulfilling work, still doing real estate, but doing it in a way that works for you. So thank you. And guys, if you haven't had a chance to check out Susie deVille's book, Buoyant, I highly recommend it. Susie, can you just give us a quick overview of what your book is about and how it can help our readers?
Absolutely. So I wrote Buoyant for entrepreneurs and visionary leaders who are painfully stuck and riddled with self doubt, who believe that that path to success and freedom is through more work,
Mhm.
discipline, and productivity. And through the very fun and easy exercises in the book, as well as the experience of reading the book, what happens to you over the course of those pages is that you discover the reality is that there is a much easier way and that you're more than capable. You're already qualified before you open the book,
Mhm.
and that you will see the changes start in your life very quickly and in very surprising ways. And there will be a new confidence about you, a new ability to move in the world that is your authentic path. And people are going to come up to you and say, "What is it about you what are you doing? What is different?" And you can just say, "I've found a much easier path to success and ease and flow. And would you believe it's by tapping into my creativity?" And that's a great conversation starter.
It is. It is. Absolutely. I love it. So before I let you go, I do want to ask you a couple of more questions. So I know you have your book, but what's one book besides your own that has had a profound impact on your life or perspective?
Well, I could probably speak for about 30 hours nonstop about this particular question because it's through books that I have literally changed my entire life.
Hmm.
But I would like to highlight Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art because I think it's a beautiful, short, very accessible book for anyone who is grappling with this mysterious and frustrating force called resistance. And Stephen Pressfield explains his own experience with dealing with resistance and how we come to understand it, to demystify it, break it down, and start to champion it. And it is just a beautiful equivalent of a B12 drip into your brain and into your soul because you just are not willing to not do the thing anymore. And he gives you a wonderful map for how to saddle up and do the thing and not let resistance win. So I highly recommend it.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. What is one fun or quirky fact about yourself that most people wouldn't know?
Gosh, um, holy moly. I think most people know all of these things, but probably that I would say probably that I love to fly fish.
Okay. Like to
I am
put those waders on and get out in the middle of the water.
I used to do the waders. Now I kind of do the hip
Okay.
cast.
Yes.
And I'm oftentimes more spending more time in the mountain laurel and rhododendron, getting my line out rather than reeling in a fish.
Right. But it's
But
the act of doing it like you
oh,
mentioned.
it's so I mean, fishing, I could fish anywhere. You could
Mhm.
put me in front of a big mud puddle with a bamboo stick and I would be so happy.
I love it. I love it. I love it. A true testament of what you just said. Being creative and doing things that energize you is not about having things to be perfect. It's about you actually doing it. So, guys, what have been some of your takeaways from this conversation? If you have any questions that you would like to ask Susie, head on over to my email at info@workitliveitownit.com, and I will pass on those questions and I will send them over to Susie so that way she can answer them. But in the meantime, Susie, what is one of the best ways for people to stay in touch with you and continue a conversation?
People can go to my website, which is innovationandcreativityinstitute.com. You can download a free toolkit for entrepreneurs there. You can connect with me on social media, and you can also read all my blog posts and check out what I'm up to next.
I love it. Well, that wraps it up for this particular episode of Work It, Live It, Own It. Thank you, Susie, so much for taking time today to sit down and have this wonderful, insightful, invigorating conversation today. And guys, most importantly, don't forget our takeaways from today, the 5 M's, but also don't forget to work it, live it, own it in your everyday lives. Take care.